A new era for Watford Football Club, with the departure of Steve Perryman and the arrival of Glenn Roeder as manager, began with an old foe. Luton Town on the first day of the season at Kenilworth Road. And Paul Telfer's early goal gave Luton the advantage, and Watford with plenty of thinking to do. A second goal followed from Kerry Dixon, but by that stage the talking point had become the double sending off of both Barry Ashby and Jason Drysdale for separate incidents. The Hatters were in control of the first day derby, but Watford at least played some quality football, giving their supporters heart, and they got a goal for their efforts, courtesy of Paul Furlong. But it was a disappointing opening in terms of results. The quality of the football gave cause for encouragement, as did the first half against Brentford in the first round of the Coca-Cola Cup. Once again, it was Paul Furlong who got his name on the score sheet, and soon Watford continued to press forward, creating further opportunities. Lee Nogan's shot was one of a number that came close, with Furlong eventually putting it over, but Watford went 2 up, courtesy of a young man named Bruce Dyer. His emergence was to be one of the highlights of Watford's season. He got his opportunity, and his left foot was as sweet as you like. The Hornets were 2 up, but their West London rivals weren't to be outdone. It was a 2-leg match, and Watford knew they had the second leg at Vicarage Road to look forward to. But a splendid free-kick strike put Brentford back in it, and Watford's defence was caught again late on, as Brentford got themselves a second goal. It finished 2-2, but the second leg was still to come. So the Hornets began the home season against Barnsley, another match which featured a sending off. 2 players went, Bruce Dyer of Watford and Jerry Taggart of Barnsley, and it was the South Yorkshire side who were to collect the points. The Vicarage Road that was somewhat unreal, only 3 sides were in use, as the new Vicarage Road end wasn't yet passed safe for the public to use it. From Barnsley's home game came the second leg against Brentford, and the Bees showed that they weren't just there to make the numbers up, and they would have forced Watford to play some quality football in their search for a place in the second round. Brentford in fact took the lead as the game started early, and Watford had to fight from a goal down. They did it in some style. Gary Porter first of all providing the cross, and the header was a good one from David Holdsworth. The Hornets were level. It was 1-1 on the night, 3-3 on aggregate, and Watford had an extra away goal if they needed it. And once again from a set piece, the Hornets created mayhem in the Brentford defence in the second half. The knock-on this time giving a clear opportunity for a winning goal. Watford 2, Brentford 1. The man who got it, delighted once again to get that second goal, was David Holdsworth. And if there was any doubt, Dyer breaking down the right, playing the ball across, and at second attempt finally playing the ball into the back of the net, was curtains for Brentford. The Hornets were into the next round of the Coca-Cola Cup, and Dyer again was on the score sheet. An early pattern was starting to emerge. Watford good at scoring goals, but sadly good at conceding them as well. And when they made the short trip up the A40, it was to be a very eventful afternoon. 5 goals in all, Watford showing good in attack to come back from an early deficit, and the perfect opportunity being presented for Ken Charlery. The Hornets were level, but it didn't last. Oxford again taking advantage, and once again the players showing that in defence they had a lot to do in terms of clearing up their marking act, and as eventually they did get themselves level at 2-2 with a goal early in the second half, the match was set up for a thrilling finale, and it was a chance that was willingly taken for the Hornets' first win under Glenn Roeder in the league. For the second season running, Luton Town provided the first opposition in the Anglo-Italian Cup, and at this time there was no doubt, as Watford took an early advantage, that they wanted revenge for their defeat on the opening day of the season. It was a Bruce Dyer goal for the Hornets, and some great football saw them build another opportunity, although Luton Town made them work very hard for it, with David Priest scoring a screaming goal. There was no chance for goalkeeper Simon Shepherd, as the Hatters were level, but Watford weren't in the mood to give away the points, and this time a great move from one end of the pitch to the other saw Furlong, Dyer and also the advancing Alex Inglethorpe combine, and it was super sub Inglethorpe who provided the toe poke right at the death to give a very popular success to the Hornets and some vital points on what they'd hoped would be the road to Italy. Charlton Athletic's arrival at Vicarage Road saw the first test for the defence since they'd conceded those goals at Oxford of any great note, and it was an early chance that Charlton Athletic took that once again left the Hornets with work to do in terms of chasing the game. Gary Porter, though, accepted a gift and they were level shortly afterwards. The Charlton defence, though, were less than pleased with themselves. Porter, in his testimonial season, was delighted with his gift, and Charlton, though, showed that they were to prove a real handful as the season wore on, and an amazing incident saw Charlton take the lead once more. The Hornets' defence seemingly set on creating chances at will for the opposition. And not to be outdone, the header knocked in, and eventually it fell to that man Inglethorpe to tie things up at 2-2. Watford involved in some great games. The neutrals were loving it. They were scoring at will and conceding at will. As this opportunity showed, once again, Alex Inglethorpe's predatory instinct in front of goal, snatching a vital result for Watford. Looking back on it, the match against Wolves was as good as Watford had performed all season. The passion was there, and so too was the ability to play football at the highest degree. Ken Chalobah's cross-come shot deflected in, and an own goal that was to give Watford a vital victory against the Wolves, one of the teams strongly fancied for promotion in early season. Porter's cross, and again the Wolves defence just watched. Eventually they were to clear this opportunity, but it was certainly one of many that the Hornets created in a memorable occasion. Graham Turner's men indeed were saved a heavier defeat by the woodwork as Watford produced one of their most passion-filled performances of the season. And so did Grimsby. Many people believe the game at Blundell Park the previous year had been one of the best football occasions of the entire campaign, but the Mariners were in the mood this time to make Watford pay in full for defensive lapses. Grimsby had made the attacks from the start, and as Watford battled to bring men back, the Mariners' neat one-touch football created opportunities, and an early penalty was the Mariners' reward. The referee could hardly have been closer as he waved away Gary Porter's protests. The Mariners had proved in recent seasons that although their gates and their economy was small in comparison to many clubs in the division, they produced quality football, and Watford would have to match them. In the second half, the Hornets set about doing just that. Once again from a set piece, the Grimsby keeper not happy with it, and the reward, a splendid strike. Watford were level at 1-1 to the delight of the small travelling band of Hornet supporters as Gary Porter grabbed a vital goal. And there was more to come. Lee Nogan playing the ball in, and it was inevitably that man, Paul Furlong, and Ken Chalobah coming in behind him as the second Watford goal was scored. But Grimsby late again, getting a point in a 2-2 draw from a header. A sickener for Watford, who thought they'd got it won. Then came a rude awakening as Ricky Otto masterminded a super show by Southend United that destroyed the Hornets' hopes in the Anglo-Italian Cup. Everything Otto tried seemed to come off, and there was nothing that the Watford defence could do as the second goal went in, and there was more to come. The misery was completed for the Hornets in the second half. Southend were to go on to win the group by getting a point, which was all they needed in the last match at Luton. And once again, it was that man Otto at the centre of attention. The ball finally driven home spectacularly. Poor Simon Shepherd had no chance with any of them. Southend United 3, Watford 0, and it was the end of the Italian hopes. Gary Porter for Paul Furlong. The number of times that had been the production line for Watford during the course of the season was clear for all to see. Another set piece against Notts County gave the Hornets the lead. And indeed, at front of their home supporters, Watford were playing some good quality football. Another break, this time in the field, found Chalobah. Chalobah fed Lavin. Lavin's cross, and enter Paul Furlong once again to put the Hornets 2 goals in front. The County, also from a set piece, exploited the gaps in the Watford defence to some purpose. The unsighted Simon Shepherd, finding to his embarrassment the ball had gone between his legs, to get them back into contention. And as the match wore on, it was left to a very special moment for one young Watford star. It was the first time they'd opened the new Vicarage Road end, and it was a goal worthy of a very special occasion from youngster Gerard Lavin, one of the finds of the season for Watford, a personable young man off it, and a man of considerable talent on it, especially as we were to find out even more later in the season from distance. It was a tremendous shot, and the moment it went in, you got the feeling, well, this player is going places, hopefully with Watford. Millwall's visit in the Coca-Cola Cup second round was a match which promised much but didn't produce it. Both sides at the end of the day probably quite happy with the point. The chances were nearly no more than half. Gary Porter putting one in and going just wide from Paul Furlong. It meant that the match would be settled in the second leg at the New Den, 0-0 after the first. It was another home game just days later against Sunderland, with Watford getting the first goal once more. The Sunderland defence at 6s and 7s, and Barry Ashby loitering with intent on the 6-yard line, giving them the lead. It looked as though it was going to be Watford's afternoon when Sunderland striker Phil Gray was sent off shortly afterwards. But any thought that that goal by Barry Ashby, a defender joining the attack, would be enough was to be sadly thwarted. Sunderland pushed forward with purpose, and once again the Watford defence parted at the seams. They had to settle for a point as they embarked on a difficult week, which saw them have 2 consecutive trips to high-flying Millwall, first in the league, and one of the most disappointing afternoons for the Hornets, with Millwall running riot early against a Watford defence that simply couldn't cope with them, and in the end they were conceding goals at will, such to the extent that the half-time came as a release. Millwall were well fired up for the occasion, and they took their chances to some purpose. Even from the long kick by Casey Keller, the Watford defence weren't able to clear, and they were made to pay for it. Manager Glenn Roeder was to speak afterwards of his alarm at some of the individual mistakes that were made in one of the performances the Watford fans won't be thanking anyone for reminding them of. Chance after chance Millwall created in the first half, and Simon Shepherd's heroics weren't enough on their own. Millwall playing with purpose, with vision and with style really thrilled their fans, and the consolation for Watford was the fact that it wasn't that long a journey home. As the second half came, it was the same old story. Millwall cutting loose at will, and the net result of all that was that there were more goals thereafter. Many believed it should have been a penalty, but the referee decided a free kick would suffice. It really didn't make that much difference. Millwall still scored from it. And there was more even than that, as Millwall's continued pressure saw Watford chasing shadows despite improving their own performance in the second half, and there was nothing Simon Shepherd could do to stop the Millwall goal spree. Even though the Hornets did get something in the way of a late consolation, that was all it was to be. An opportunity taken by Lee Nogan, but it was a matter of pride. 4 days later, it was back to the same venue, and an astonishing game with Watford taking a lead through Gary Porter. It had been 0-0 after the first game, so it was win or bust for the Hornets. A draw might have sufficed had it been high enough on away goals, but Millwall's goal scoring on the Saturday had left many supporters worried and wondering. But to their immense credit, Watford took the game by the scruff of the neck. Lee Nogan made it 2-0 to the visitors, and the Hornets, the rank outsiders in the eyes of the neutrals, found themselves 2 up. but it was all to turn sour for Watford, with first Paul Furlong involved in this incident. And referee Philip Don, on the FIFA list, was left with little option, despite the protests of the Hornets players, and Gary Porter in particular, to take drastic action. Furlong went down, the tackle came in, but it was what followed that Mr. Don didn't like. Furlong's reward, a red card. And there was more drama to come. Watford, a man down, but still with their defence intact, conceded a goal to give Millwall some hope before half-time. They made full advantage of it to go in all square at the interval. The second half had hardly begun when it all happened again. David Holdsworth following in on a late challenge, a melee resulting, and eventually two players were given the red card by Philip Don. Holdsworth, one of them. And Watford had to try and compete with 9 against the 10 men of Millwall. Holdsworth was holding his nose after the incident, but the stage was set for a stirring finale. Watford had but 9 men, and Andy Hessenthaler grabbed a priceless goal. Watford, it seemed, were about to pull off one of the biggest shocks in their recent history. But just as it seemed as though the moments were ticking away towards the final whistle, Millwall got it level to 3-3. Still the Hornets battled on, but right at the end, Millwall, through Etienne Verveer, in the last 30 seconds, denied them. It all came late against Middlesbrough. Furlong goes on, oh yes! Beautifully struck, and the Vicarage Road end rejoice. It was a beautiful strike by the big number 9. And even the fans rejoice. Now Dyer, can he finish it? He can, and that's the perfect finale from the crackerjack youngster. An afternoon that thrilled the local fans and television audience was followed by one of bitter disappointment. On an afternoon where Paul Furlong collected his second red card, it was a goal by Wallace that was to prove decisive against Birmingham. And Bolton Wanderers, just a matter of days later, was to provide one of the most extraordinary games Vicarage Road has ever seen. Bolton, with Bruce Rioch and Colin Todd in control, were renowned for the quality of their football. And for long periods in the game, they simply had too much for Watford. 2-0 up at half-time, they added a third shortly thereafter. Watford, it seemed, were in big trouble. But one thing we'd seen during the early months of the Glenn Roeder era at Watford was the spirit in the camp, epitomised by Gary Porter leading from the front, giving them hope. One or two supporters at that stage decided enough's enough, and they missed some quite extraordinary action. Again, it was Porter coming in on the charge to make it 3-2. Maybe, just maybe, there was time for Watford to rescue a point. A third goal with just a minute or so left. Watford had crowned, it seemed, an extraordinary fight back, courtesy of Ken Charlery. But from a Gary Porter corner, referee Mike Pearce, one of the best seen at Watford, spotted a hand from a Bolton defender. No one who saw the last 20 minutes against Bolton will forget it, as Gary Porter grabbed the 3 most unlikely points of the season. A wonderful game, 7 goals, and for excitement, it surely won't be bettered. Against West Bromwich Albion away from home, Watford again had problems. First came West Brom's strike. They're led by a 1-0. As they continued to press forward in search of more, came another red card. Andy Hessenthaler this time given his marching orders, as Watford proved away from home in defence. They simply weren't able to handle some very strong attacking play, particularly from the West Midlands sides. Some will regard it as unfortunate that Jason Solomon's superb blockbuster was to turn out to be nothing more than a consolation for the Hornets, as in the second half West Brom made absolutely certain the points would be theirs. And the fourth goal, which came shortly before the end, summed up Watford's afternoon, which once again was to be remembered for their disappointment at a refereeing decision which saw them play large parts of the game with only 10 men. At Southend, Jonathan Hunt's early goal and a splendidly worked left-foot shot to the frustration of Simon Shepherd gave many Hornets fans who'd seen the Anglo-Italian demise a case of déjà vu. The Hornets, though, worked free kicks well. Gary Porter forcing a fine save out of the Southend goalkeeper. But again, it was Southend's attacking prowess that was to prove decisive. Jonathan Hunt playing the ball in, but the referee, Mike Bailey, gave a penalty. He'd seen an incident with a push involved and pointed straight to the spot. Southend United had an opportunity to get a second goal as Gary Poole's cross was played in. The push spotted by the referee, and from it Gary Poole said thank you, and Southend led by 2-0. Stoke City, under Lou Macari's management, had been promoted the previous season, and they were showing that they were not in the first division just to make the numbers up, with a string of impressive performances. And once again, it was a day when the defence simply found the Stoke attack, they couldn't handle it. Although they found themselves with a Bruce Dyer goal to show for their efforts, Stoke City had played some very good football, and in the second half, again they exploited Watford's defensive problems, picking up the points as they went. The third Stoke City goal is another one that Watford won't be thanking their supporters for reminding them of. David Regis tripped, as the referee surely would have given a penalty if he hadn't. He was able to put the ball firmly into the back of the net. Gary Willard, the referee, happy simply to allow the goal to stand. And with it the points went up the M6 to the Potteries. International calls meant the postponement of the following week's trip to Portsmouth, a blank fortnight for the Hornets until they played Bristol City. Again, the perfect start. Bruce Dyer's cross and the first goal seeming to put Watford on their way. But Bristol City, who'd been real cannon fodder for Watford at past Vicarage Road meetings, were having none of it. One good save by Perry Suckling had denied them. But another set piece was to prove their undoing. Bristol City had threatened long, and finally, just as it seemed that one goal would be enough, the West Country side got an equaliser. And so the Hornets prepared for Crystal Palace, a side that had come with a tremendous reputation against a Watford side now feeling the full weight of suspensions. Paul Furlong was out until Christmas. There were bans too for Andy Hessenthaler, as Watford found that they were having to play more of their squad players than they would ideally have wanted. Crystal Palace took full advantage. In a disappointing afternoon, with the television cameras beaming the match throughout London, Palace showed championship mettle, which was to give them the championship at the end of the season. But Watford did at least grab one late consolation to ensure that their pride at least emerged intact. Lee Nogan the marksman, but it was only one. The return trip to Stoke City, who'd been at Watford just 3 weeks earlier, was to give the men from the Potteries an early chance of getting a double over Watford. Again, the Hornets were forced to field a weakened side, and Stoke City, playing around the edge of their box with considerable purpose against the Watford defence, exploited it to the full. Once Stoke went one up, Watford, although they continued to compete and continued to try, simply had no mastery when Dave Regis produced a superb second goal, good enough to win any game. The Hornets knew it wasn't to be their afternoon, and Stoke City claimed the double over Glenn Roeder's men. It was the start of a week of frustration on their travels for Watford. First of all, there was Stoke, then there was Portsmouth. The game rescheduled from the previous month, and the mastery of Paul Walsh was one particular problem that Watford had to contend with. And although they did it to some effect for long periods, the one chance Walsh had, he made full advantage of, setting it up on a plate. And in the second half, it was 2, as the substitute got in on the act as well. And Portsmouth completed the jamboree by 2-0. And so to the new look Molineux. And Wolves, looking to avenge their September defeat, saw Steve Bull grab the first goal. Of big concern to Watford and their supporters was the lack of goal scoring that had coincided with the suspension of Paul Furlong. And Wolves second ensured the point stayed at Molineux as the Hornets prepared for the big derby against Luton. That's beautifully knocked on. Now Dyer, the goalkeeper's got to make his mind up. Dyer, and beautifully taken. Jürgen Sommer looks in despair, and Dyer celebrates. That's the perfect start. Another long free kick, and again the Luton defence looking and trying to see what's on. And I'll tell you what's on, a second Watford goal for Bruce Dyer. Trevor Peake looks across at Jürgen Sommer, and he looks across as if to say, where did he come from? Important for Luton to get a good start here. Watford certainly at the moment in control. Dixon cuts inside. Perry Digweed's got to come. Priest scores. Digweed forced to come to try and cut it out. Looks certainly as though they would want to try and hold on to this, but now the charge on again. Julian James playing the ball in, and it's come. Was that a handball by the defender? It was. Dreyer, it's 2-2. And 2 up at half-time isn't enough for Watford. Luton have squared it. Leicester City away. Not perhaps the most appealing of Boxing Day fixtures against a side that was going well at the top of the table. An early foul, an early goal from the penalty spot, making it look very tough indeed for Watford. And an extraordinary second half followed. Hessenthaler's header, and the goalkeeper dropped it. Bruce Dyer sneaked in, 1-1. And even at this stage, how many punters they'd wanted a bet could have decided what was going to happen. Another long ball in. David Oldfield, 2-1 Leicester. But the battling qualities of the Watford side had impressed all season. Another corner, another opportunity for a cross. David Oldfield, referee set play on, and strike from Paul Furlong. 2-2. Back came Leicester. A seesaw battle of the very highest quality. 3-2. David Oldfield. Back came Watford. Paul Furlong playing in gloves against the cold, nicking a great opportunity courtesy of a gift from the Leicester defence. 3-3. 5 minutes left, and Watford suddenly for the first time in the match saw luck spin their way. Bruce Dyer, splendid strike, and they led 4-3. But just as it seemed as though the perfect Christmas present for Watford supporters of an away win was coming, Perry Digweed missed a cross, and Leicester City had got it at 4-4. Ormond Royd, the scorer, an amazing morning's work. Peterborough were bottom of the table and in desperate trouble. And again, it was Paul Furlong who gave Watford the lead. The Posh included in their side Ken Charlery, who'd left Vicarage Road a week earlier. And the second half saw the Hornets grab a second, which surely was to be decisive. Again, it was that man Furlong getting in between the two Peterborough defenders and grabbing goal with menaces. Peterborough's manager, Lil Fucillo, was, it had been rumoured, on the point of resigning. Although the Posh got a late goal through Tony Adcock, Fucillo quit minutes after the final whistle. Watford had had a good Christmas, 4 points and 6 goals. But it wasn't to be a happy new year. The opening day against Tranmere Rovers had started in disappointing fashion against one of the teams very much in form at the top. Tranmere Rovers have been almost invincible at home, but Watford looked as though they were going to get a point early in the second half. Not for the first time, the danger came from a set piece. Paul Furlong, trying to make up for lost time, hit the post. And as Tranmere battled to clear the ball, one sensed that Watford could go and get an equalising goal. But Tranmere continued to press. The ball played across once more, and the second goal was helped into the back of the net. They led by 2 goals to 0, but Watford was still fighting and battling for everything. The long ball forward found Paul Furlong. He cut beautifully inside one challenge and a second, and off the defender. Watford had one back. On the way home again, it was a question of supporters reflecting on what they'd missed during Furlong's long suspension. And so to the visit of Nottingham Forest on Bank Holiday Monday. For the Hornets, a perfect start in a passion-filled first 45 minutes. Officially an own goal, but a tremendous start for the Hornets, with Andy Hessenthaler providing the opportunity from the cross by Lee Nogan for Forest to press the self-destruct button. But in that second half, Forest upped the throttle and Watford had no answer. To Digweed and his defenders' fury, Forest, relegated a year earlier and under new management, proved that they were going to stay the course in the promotion race. A point wasn't to be for Watford, as they conceded second half goals that sent 3 points on the road to Nottingham. Meanwhile, the road for Watford was to East London and defeat at the hands of Premiership West Ham by 2 goals to 1 in the FA Cup. The supporters reflected on a league table showing goals against 50 was the principal cause for concern. Despite their heroics in front of goal, they were still leaking goals more often than any other First Division defence, as the second half of the league campaign dawned with a match against Birmingham City managed by Barry Fry at Vicarage Road. A very vital afternoon indeed for the Hornets. Dyer again, and the cross might come his way. This punch, now Porter knocks it back in. Daesh will play. No, he won't. He'll put it in his own goal. Furlong coming in, and Daesh on loan from Cambridge puts it in his own net, and that is just the start Watford wanted. Furlong. That's beautifully done. Now Hessenthaler's in the clear. It's a 1 against 1. Hessenthaler. 2-0. And the finish matched the move by Andy Hessenthaler. Dyer. And at the moment, Birmingham are chasing shadows towards the edge of their area. As Dyer comes on his way again. Now can he knock the cross in? He can! Oh, Furlong! Thank you very much. It's 3-0. And Dyer and Furlong. Dyer again. Now Furlong. What will he do with this one? He'll bury it! He saw him off his line and he smashed it gloriously in. Furlong again. And he's gone down under the challenge, and that is a penalty. The referee may well have to use the red card, and does. And Birmingham City have got enough problems. Furlong scores. And Watford go nap. And Birmingham City got just a little bit of pride to play for now. And they have one back. It won't surely be more than that. But again, the Watford defence probably not too pleased with conceding goals against the Birmingham side, and Watson's missed this one. Here's another chance. And it's 5-2 in a quite extraordinary contest. And so to Middlesbrough. 2 seasons ago, Watford's route to escapism had begun with a victory there. Middlesbrough were under pressure, with all sorts of speculation surrounding their manager Lenny Lawrence. Watford attacked from the start, and despite conceding that goal, Paul Furlong, who else, continued his remarkable return to form. 1-1. A rearranged match against Derby on a Saturday afternoon reserved for the Cup was hardly the perfect Saturday for Watford, or so the fixture list seemed. And when Derby scored early, it seemed to make it absolutely certain. But Gary Porter again led the fight back, serving a perfect cross for Jason Solomon to make it 1-1. And Watford were able to turn the considerable advantage they had into a goal. From another Gary Porter corner, Paul Furlong, 2-1. A priceless win for Glenn Roeder's side as they prepared for another away trip to Bolton. The Wanderers needed no motivation. It still hurt that they'd thrown away a 3-goal lead to the Gary Porter show when the teams had met at Vicarage Road in October. And though conditions were difficult, Bolton showed the old 1-2. Watford 2 goals down, helping themselves along the way, not much. And again, with a big mountain to climb. But there was hope even before the half-time whistle. Free kick. Gary Porter organising things as usual, with Hessenthaler and Baisley also involved. But from it, the free kick, Alex Inglethorpe, 2-1. For the Hornets, there was hope. The hope was to turn to despair as Bolton made the point safe with a penalty. The challenge by David Holdsworth not to referee Reed's liking, and he pointed to the spot. Bolton had the chance to make absolutely safe, and with it the 3 points they felt they should have had at Vicarage Road, and they took it. That defeat meant that Watford faced a crucial match against West Bromwich Albion, also in the wrong half of the table, a week later. It was nervous, and sadly for Watford, it was also pointless. West Brom got the 1 goal that mattered. Despite a lot of Watford pressure, the best opportunity coming in the second half. Again Gary Porter's corner, and just over the top was the closest Watford got. Derby, a fortnight previously, had given Watford the points at the baseball ground. For them too, there was the question of setting the record straight. And with Watford going a goal down early, supporters thought they would once again have to chase the game. But the Hornets were positive in attack, taking their opportunities as they fell. At that stage, the argument was equal. Gary Porter, Paul Furlong header, suddenly it was 2-1. The Hornets in front, looking as though they might complete the double. Barry Ashby's goal. In the second half, was rip-roaring stuff by Derby, and again a disappointing goal to concede by the Hornets. The visitors were level. Dyer, Furlong, the old story. 3-2. Watford in front, Furlong doing well, as there had to be a question mark over the Derby tackling. But there was also a question mark over Watford's defending. They looked at the linesman, he wasn't in the mood to give them the offside flag they cherished. And Derby had it at 3-3. And right at the end, the agony got worse. 2 late goals, 3 late points for Derby, winning by 4 goals to 3. Yet another Vicarage Road thriller. Charlton Athletic had surprised many people by staying the course at the top of the table. Watford gifted them goals, the first to Alan Pardew. And there was more. A penalty shortly afterwards, complaints from Watford about the decision, and the Valiants 2-0 in front, as clean as a whistle. The look on defender Jason Drysdale's face said it all. All Watford could do was look at each other. Although they did create opportunities, a goal-mouth scramble eventually saw Charlton have the pressure relieved. Although how this didn't go in with Darren Baisley and then Gary Porter, the shot deflected, well, it was anybody's guess. The second half did bring some comfort. Gary Porter, a brilliant strike, 2-1, and Watford sensed they might have an opportunity of salvaging a point, with Craig Ramage joining the squad, making a marked impression. It wasn't enough, as Oxford visited the following week in another crunch encounter. Oxford took an early lead, and Watford knew that they had to play their very best because they daren't lose. And they didn't. Andy Hessenthaler's deflected shot getting an equaliser. And Watford finding the answers as the game wore on. In the second half, Oxford's defence, heavily criticised by their manager, gave Drysdale the chance, and all the poor Oxford defender could do was put the ball in his own net before it reached the advancing Paul Furlong. Watford 2, Oxford 1. At Notts County, Gary Porter, corner in, away by Notts County, as Watford started brightly and positively. Furlong, the challenge not made, and eventually Notts County somehow able to clear the danger. Again, another opportunity falling Watford's way. But this time Notts County breaking quickly out of defence, and Watford caught by it. As the ball was played in, Notts County suddenly found themselves with a wonderful opportunity to take the lead. They don't miss chances like that if you wear a number 9 shirt and intend to hang on to it. Grimsby at home will live in the Watford memory, though not for the right reasons. The Mariners completely tore Watford apart, winning in a canter to the dismay of supporters. Grimsby, it seemed, could almost score goals at will. It was a night which provoked reaction from supporters as Grimsby sped back to Humberside with the points, and a change in fortunes. It seemed only a matter of time before Glenn Roeder was in the transfer market. Bruce Dyer had gone. It seemed as there was some money available. Away at Sunderland, though, Watford had to defend. Backs to the wall stuff against a Roker side always with fanatical support. Created a few half chances, but again it was a match where the crucial action came from set pieces. Digweed could do nothing with the corner, and Sunderland were in front. The angle does no favours to tell whether it went straight in or whether it took a touch. But once Sunderland were one up, their confidence noticeably increased, giving Watford a torrid afternoon at the back, and defensive reinforcements became a matter of immediate urgency for their manager, Glenn Roeder. He knew that something had to be done to shore up a defence was simply, in his own words, giving too many goals away. They arrived before the start of the game against Millwall, and Watford provided some splendid entertainment and some splendid goals. The first, officially an own goal, with Tommy Mooney playing his full part. Then Millwall working well, hitting the bar, and eventually Perry Digweed making a good save. A vital game this was, with no little point to prove for the Hornets after what had happened in the Coca-Cola Cup. Craig Ramage fed Andy Hessenthaler, and the second goal brought tremendous celebrations. Watford ecstatic, and the talent with the arrival of new players was seeing confidence increase. It needed to. A difficult away match at Nottingham Forest, and Watford a goal down. Keith Millen and Colin Foster marshalling the defence, with Tommy Mooney and Dennis Bailey increasing the options up front, saw Watford give a positive display against the team that were rampant and on their way to automatic promotion. For the Hornets, it'll be remembered though for one stunning moment. They were 2 goals down, but Gary Porter produced a scrapbook moment of his very own. No goalkeeper on this earth would have stopped it, and the man who's shown a captain's lead was marshalling his troops. From the moment it left Porter's foot, it was goal-bound. It was to go close in the goal of the season contest. After 8 goals when the teams met at Filbert Street, you really did wonder what would happen when Leicester City came to Vicarage Road. The answer, first of all, was that Leicester would go in front. But Watford showed tremendous patience and tremendous skill at the end. Dennis Bailey, the substitute, a lifeline, a last gasp but deserved point for Watford. As they went to Peterborough United, and it was like old times. Goals galore, most of them of the sort that no manager on this earth could watch. Paul Furlong getting Watford's equaliser. Early in the second half, a penalty, Tony Adcock, 2-1 Peterborough. It only sparked Watford back into life. Keith Dublin, 2-2. And then a real moment to savour. Gerard Lavin, the goal of the night, watched by his family from nearby Corby. Peterborough were back again. A terrible blunder by Digweed. Tony Adcock, 3-3. But Watford had the last word. Almost inevitably. Dennis Bailey, 4-3. Watford were on a high for the visit of high-flying Tranmere, but the Merseyside club got the first goal. Dennis Bailey got the equaliser. Watford thought they had a point. Tranmere, though, had other ideas. It was building up into quite a season's climax for Watford, although that day was pointless. At Barnsley, a tremendous team performance again. Paul Furlong, 1-0 Watford. Barnsley themselves weren't clear of relegation trouble, and he'll score few more important goals. Played 2, lost 2 was Watford's record against Southend, who were now managed by former Hornets number 2 Peter Taylor. Taylor must have known he was in for a warm welcome with Watford's astonishing and explosive start. The goals just kept on flooding. First there was Bailey. Then Mooney. And then Colin Foster. 10 minutes in, 3-0. and fosters influence at both ends of the pitch, clear for all to see. If you want to stay friends with Perry Digweed, don't remind him of the goal Bristol City scored. Digweed, honest enough to admit, was his mistake that gave the Robins the lead. But in the second half, Watford threw players forward, playing some good quality football that had become their hallmark during the course of the campaign, found themselves with an equalising goal. And who else but Mr. Paul Furlong. Beautiful goal, taking full advantage of a keeper to lob him to perfection. A vital point for Watford as they squared up to Portsmouth. Hessenthaler, now he's looking up at an opportunity and scores! Beautifully done again, and Andy Hessenthaler's goal. Furlong. The woodwork denies. Bailey. To try and cut it back in, and does. Chance for Furlong and wide. And Portsmouth to push players forward here. Still that Hessenthaler goal denies the sides. Digweed will just about managed to hold on. The defenders. It was that result to give Watford safety, and so to Crystal Palace. Picking its spot again, Hessenthaler. And the champions find themselves a goal down to Andy Hessenthaler. Sweet as you like, right foot shot, 1-0. Look at the part Craig Ramage played in this. He set it up. And Andy Hessenthaler from Paul Furlong's knockdown. Martin saw it late. It's 1-0 Watford. It is again from another angle. Again it was Rambo that started it and Hesse that finished it. The champions beginning to think they may have to give second best here. Hessenthaler. Certainly it seems as though that victory against Portsmouth and the safety rather lifted Watford as Furlong now finds Tommy Mooney. And Mooney's made it too. Furlong and Mooney combine to settle it. An anti-climax for Palace and glory for Watford. So Watford getting the second goal, and look at again the part Furlong played in it. But look at the way he saw Mooney. He could have gone himself. Mooney just onside, left-footed effort. Beautiful strike. And Watford get the second goal. They ended with 2 wins and plenty to talk about, especially the goals for manager Glenn Roeder.
I think we've scored some excellent goals this year. Again, Gary Porter scored a very good goal at Charlton. Didn't get a particular lot of credit for it because it was a goal in a defeat, and when you lose, if you score, the man who scored doesn't get too much credit for it, but it was an excellent goal he scored there. Gerard Lavin has only scored good goals this year. Fantastic goal against Notts County from the edge of the box. A 30-yarder against Peterborough that was very important. Paul Furlong scored some good goals. The 2 against Birmingham were excellent goals. Hessenthaler scored some very important goals, breaking from midfield, going clean through. With just the goalkeeper to beat. Everyone thinks when you've just got the goalkeeper to beat, it's easy to score. Actually, it's quite difficult. And Andy has done ever so well. He's very rarely missed when he has gone clean through. And of course, there's many other goals. Paul Furlong has been suspended for 8 matches. The period where he was suspended for 7, it took him 3 games to get going. So it was like having him out for 10. So he's missed a large proportion of the season. In a team that, generally speaking, has found the going difficult and has still come up with 19 goals. When you put that in the context of Collymore scoring 24 and Armstrong scoring 24 at their respective clubs, clubs that have been promoted, when you look at Paul Furlong's 19, it's an excellent return. And it's a wonderful feeling when you know you've secured the position of the club in the first division, and it just makes you that more determined not to let it happen again.
Hey you, click here for more videos.